Hey everybody, got a slightly new look to the fish room there. So we are gonna come in and get the lights turned on, and we are gonna do an around the world update today. Got a few things to talk about. So normally I turn this little light right here on that reflects off the ceiling and gives enough light in the room that the rest of the fish know that the main lights are about to start coming on. It usually gets the goldfish swimming around. Then we turn on my artificial sun, get the pond lit up, disturb poor little squeakers slumber over there. And then I reach underneath of here. I got one switch that turns on this whole side of the room. That's the 125 all the way around to Butterbean's tank. Comes on with that switch. And then over here we've got another switch. And that turns on this side of the room. So today what we are going to do is just go around the room, look at each tank, talk about them. You should know the format of an around the world update by now. Not a whole lot going on in some of the tanks, but plenty to talk about in others. So in my pond here, you can see this great big piece of wood. Well, that big piece of wood used to stick way up out of the water, and long story short, I burned that the other day. After I'd cut it off, I'd just thrown it out of my yard as scrap wood, and it went in my burning barrel the other day, and based on the way it burned, it had to have been covered or saturated with resin. Very, very saturated with resin, almost to the point where it seemed like it was fat wood. It burned vigorously, and black smoke was pouring off of it as it was roaring with fire. So I've been asked a lot of times over the years about whether or not it's safe to use certain kinds of wood. I've always said stay away from resinous wood, stay away from pines, because I've always heard that myself. But clearly I have had resinous pine wood in my pond here for quite a long time. I had it in the pond outside for a year, and I'm not having any issues whatsoever. So I don't think putting resinous wood in your aquarium is necessarily going to be that big of an issue, since I've been doing it myself for quite a long time now. In fact, some of the pieces of wood I have, some of the larger pieces of wood, for all I know, this could be pine wood, but I don't think it is. But anyway, we'll see. So that is what's going on in the pond. I did get in and stick my little bottle brush inside the pump intake, which got my water flowing nice and vigorously again. So we've got all of that running. And otherwise, everything is just ticking over nicely. But I did want to mention that I have discovered most definitely that is a very resinous wood. These are just some water Sprite I've taken out of my 20-gallon tank. We'll see in a minute. I'm going to try to separate any duckweed out of that and get it going in a duckweed-free zone. All right, let's turn that light off so we get a little less glare on some of the other tanks. My 29 miscellaneous. Got my angelfish hanging out back in the corner. She might be getting ready to lay eggs again. She does that quite a lot. She usually does it up in that back corner. So we'll see how that turns out. Sorry for my voice. I got a little bit of a sinus infection today, so I'm a little bit stuffed up in the head and not feeling great. So we'll get through this here anyway. So, like I said, it looks good. Nothing really going on. I don't have to get in this tank very often and do maintenance. It doesn't have a high amount of light on it. In fact, this Anubias here, I don't believe I've ever trimmed this Anubias here, and that has been in the tank for over a decade, and I don't believe I've ever trimmed that. This Java Fern was thinned out a little recently, and from time to time I have to snip the top of this Anubias off because this one does grow pretty vigorously, and you can see right there I got a little leaf and a flower. I know it's not technically a flower, it's a bract, but we call it a flower because that's kind of what it looks like. So everything is doing well in there, ticking over like a clock. This tank usually does. Not a whole lot to say about this one. So we will move right on over to the 55. Get my tripod out of the way. You know, I do a live stream every Friday night and Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, so make sure you tune in for those if you're interested. Now, this tank I've been enjoying a lot more lately. The cyanobacteria is not as terrible since I try to work on staying on top of it a little more frequently. I've been removing a lot more of the Java moss, so instead of it growing all thick and lush in there, which I do like that look, but I also like the fish to be able to swim around. I like the tank brightly lit, and I don't like everything all covered with cyanobacteria, and that's what starts to happen if I let this tank go for long periods of time. If you'll see, the rock is sort of clean, but it has some dirtier spots on it. That one too. This rock has actually slipped backwards. I need to pull this one here a little bit forward. But you can see how some spots are really clean, other spots are kind of clean. The very clean spots are where the rubber lip pleco has kept everything scraped clean. I mean, it's shiny almost. So the kind of clean spots are where I've done some of the removal with my siphon, and then once it's started, that rubber lip kind of stays on top of keeping that scraped all clean. So by keeping the maintenance a little higher than usual in this tank, I am sort of staying on top of the cyanobacteria, and it's looking a little bit brighter. And of course, keeping the water so tannin free makes it nice and pin sharp like that. Really like clear water. The other change I made was I recently opened up this cave here for my striped Raphael, and now that he has room to move around, we see him much more frequently. He comes out, he swims around the tank, and you can clearly see the tail of my red-tailed loach back there. A fish we have not seen more than a few minutes over the course of the last 10 years or so that fish has been in this tank. But now that I've moved this around, we actually see it fairly frequently if, we're only seeing its tail. At least we never saw that before. At least we're seeing its tail occasionally now. So that fish does come out, make an appearance, and swim around from time to time. And I'm happy about that. After all these years, I'm finally getting to see that fish that I have. So that is about all I can think of going on in the gourami tank. Next we'll move over to the 55. Now, I did have one of these, probably that really big one right here, when I recently got a whole bunch of fish from one of my viewers. Amongst them, it was mostly live bears, but I did get one Buenos Aires tetras and a few black skirts, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I threw them all into my gourami tank here, so my black skirt population has gone up by several. But I had also thrown that Buenos Aires in here, and the other day I finally caught it and got it out and moved it over into this tank, and so now it is in here and doing well. So this Buenos Aires that's got the thing on its face has still got the thing on its face. It looks like the one side has broken off, but the other side seems like it's getting bigger. So it's been like that for over a year now. I have no idea what it is. It's some kind of tumor or growth or something. It's not contagious, and it doesn't seem to bother the fish very much at all, so I'm going to continue not worrying about it. Other than that, not a whole lot to talk about. I got my new shark, Shamu, in here, and that shark just looks amazing. I'm absolutely in love with the way that shark looks here in the tank. I've decided I'm going to let the crypt just grow in as much as I possibly can and just see if I can fill the tank with it. I don't think I'm going to have too much of an issue doing that. It does make it a little difficult to tell. This piece right here and some of this down here, this is a big piece of wood in the tank, in addition to the log that I have laying across the whole front of the tank. I do have this big piece of wood right here that's kind of hard to tell. You can see my discus is laying low, hanging out in the corner because the lights just came on. He's probably still a little upset about the day just getting started so abruptly. So we will move on to my 40. Nothing really to talk about here in the 40. We did a water change recently, and that is about it. This tank received quite a few of the live bears that were given to me by my viewer. These sort of spotted black ones, or orange with the black spots on them, those are called Sankey, I believe, and I bought those from PetSmart. But the ones that are, see, there's the male. You can see he's got that sword on the tail. So those are the Sankey. I really like them. But I've now got guppies in here. I've got endlers in here. I've got these platies that have that sort of blue in the middle, but orange around the outsides. I've got these platies, which look like creamsicles or something. They're sort of white up front or silvery blue up front and orange in the back. I like those. And then I've got these over here that are sort of mixed between blue and orange, and they've got some speckles on them. So I don't know if I'm going to start getting hybrids or what's going on in here. And then there, of course, is my black and white angelfish, Frank Gorshin. It's always tough to look at angelfish because they always want to look directly at you, and then of course they more or less vanish when you look at them straight on. Not quite as skinny as discus, but angelfish are not exactly thick fish, so if they look at you straight on, it's kind of hard to spot them. So there you go with the 40. Again, not a whole lot going on, just got it kind of cleaned up, did a little bit of a water change, and everything in there is still looking spiffy. Loving it. So getting to this end of the room, I didn't do anything to the tank itself, but if you'll remember, I used to have a black cloth that hung down here, and it blocked out the light from those windows, and it blocked out that mirror, so if I was down here shooting video, you didn't see me shooting the video in the background, etc. But if you'll notice, that's where all our gym equipment is. That's where we work out back there. And so rather than keeping that as a separate sort of little room, these handles sticking up here, this is my Bowflex in the corner, stand right there, rather elevated when I'm standing up on it. And so now I can actually enjoy my fish room while I'm down here working out. I can look right in here at the back side of this tank. We also removed the backing on this tank, so if we do come around, love my Bowflex. If we do come around this side of the room, we can actually see in the back of the tank, and it just looks a lot different from this side. I never designed it to be viewed from this side, so it definitely looks different. And we can see the silhouette of my little clown pleco. And somewhere back here is my great big pleco. There he is. You can see him, his back of his body sticking out as he's hanging out on the rock up there. There's my angelfish. And then, of course, there's my spotted tilapia flow hanging out in the back of the tank. So I'm digging it. I like being able to look at the tank. And then again, if we stood up on the Bowflex, you can look down around the room. I know this bar of light's kind of in the way, but you do get to see down there. So the other thing I'm thinking about doing to this bar of lights, I was thinking about this morning, when we look in either of these tanks that are facing this one, you see some serious glare already from these lights. And so now we're going to have the windows back here as well. But I'm often down here shooting at night, so I'm not too worried about that. What I am worried about is these bright lights. You can see 6 dots. The way you see them in the mirror, you see those 6 dots on these tanks when you're trying to look at them. So what I think I'm going to do is take some tape and a little strip of aluminum foil. I don't want it to be so down that it's reflecting the light into a column, but just on this front edge, I'm going to put a little thin strip of aluminum foil just to create a little bit of a shade so you don't see that bright white line where the light's glowing out of it like that. And if I can reduce that, it should greatly reduce the glare we see in these videos. So I'll get the best of both worlds. I'll have the back down so we can see the other side of the room, or rather see this side of the room from the other side of the room, and we can also reduce all the glare from all these lights. So that's the biggest change I've made. It's not actually much of a change, but visually it seems very, very different. There's a whole different vibe when I walk in the room now, so that's kind of interesting. All right, moving along. My snail tank is still my snail tank. I keep the lights turned off because I get algae green water when I turn it on. Snails don't need the light. They get plenty of ambient light. They're doing fine. And so we're just going to let them keep doing their thing. You can see Blackie in the corner back there sleeping. Blackie always seems to be sleeping unless he's in there eating. So this one is Wednesday. This is Melissa fish, and the calico one down here, which is a slightly different kind of goldfish. That's not an oranda. All the other 3 are orandas, but the one in the back there, Bruce Brown, is just a fancy fantail. So only had 1 flower bloom on this tank so far. Every other flower's come up and then sort of died off and doesn't look right. So we do have another flower spike. We got some good slapping pads, but I'll spare that for now. We'll do some slapping on Friday nights live stream. If you're interested in that, make sure you check out my live stream on Friday night. And it looks like one of my little sponges has fallen out, so I got to get in there and retrieve that. I don't even see it in there. It's in there somewhere, I'm sure. I don't know where else it would have fallen to. Well, that is weird. Oh, okay, I do see it. It's behind this rock right here. It's in there. I was gonna say I don't know where else it could have fallen to. I doubt it bounced out of the tank, but it's in there. All right, everybody, we got some more pads in here, but these are not exactly slapping pads because I think this red tiger lotus in my discus tank here is starting to go dormant, or it's just not growing as vigorously as it was. Beware of the cat. Watch where you're stepping. So it still looks good, but it's not growing anywhere near as vigorously as it was, and I have not seen a flower spike come off of this one in quite a while, so I'm beginning to think that that one might be fading towards the dormant side. Excuse me. Like I said, I have a bit of a sinus infection here. I'm not feeling great, but we are getting through this. If you'll notice, we've got that strange green sort of effect in the water. A few days ago, I put some medication in this tank, and I did so for my Tanoma here. He had a spot on his chin that had a little bit of fungal growth on it. It looked like he had looked like he was growing a little goatee or something. Had a little tuft of fur right on the bottom of his chin. And so I put this medication in the tank. It's called General Aid Special. And I don't know exactly what's in it. I can't find the ingredients anywhere, but it very obviously has one of its main ingredients is malachite green. And so I put it in there, and within 24 hours, the little bit of fuzziness on his chin, that little spot of fungal infection, was gone. I came down the following morning after having put it in the tank, and I could tell that something was happening. The fungus was still there, but it didn't look the same. It wasn't quite so bright white and fuzzy looking. It was getting a little bit almost like a grayish brown color to it. And then in that afternoon when I was doing my live stream that evening, we checked and it was gone. So 24 hours cleared that up. And now I'm just giving it another day, and probably this afternoon, depending on how I feel, I'm going to get down here and do a big water change, and we'll start getting that medication out of the tank. I know it's hard to tell, but most of my discus are hiding back there in the bushes and whatnot, doing these around the world. As soon as I turn the lights on in the morning, the fish are still a little sketched out a lot of times, but that's okay. It gives you guys an idea of what my fish room looks like in various times of the day. Normally when you see them, I'm down here, I'm feeding everybody, it's nice and active, and all the fish are swimming around, so this gives you a good idea of the kind of stuff that I see on a more frequent basis. The tank's looking very subdued, very chilled out. I love the way the silver dollars all just stack up at the bottom and just sit there and hang out and don't do a whole lot. The silver dollars have turned out to be really rewarding fish too. I put off buying those for years and years. First of all, you need a fairly large tank. And secondly, I was always told that they're super skittish, and if you get them, you know, every time you walk in the room, they're going to dart and dash because they're so skittish, and it'll wind up killing them, and they, you know, they're just a really delicate fish. And so I finally took the chance on getting them, and they've turned out to be quite rewarding. They're not nearly as freakish as everybody seems to claim they are. So, moving on to my 20-gallon. This is Gilgalad's tank. There is the mighty Gilgalad himself. I know he's a little hard to see, but that is a half-moon betta. And he probably thinks he's getting some food too. Beautiful fish. He's mostly blue, but he's got some traces of black in him. And right on the tip of his tail, he's got some little spots of white as well. So, very, very pretty fish. Got some guppies, I got some endlers, I have some embers, tetras. Those little redfish you see there are ember tetras. I have a school of those in here. And I've also got a banjo catfish, which is actually making a bit of an appearance. I did see this one out on the glass the other day. That's very unusual. But it's also unusual even to see it above the substrate. It usually buries itself. It probably will be after a while, but since the lights just came on, it's probably still exposed from being outside at night. Quarantine tank down on the bottom is empty. Nothing in there worth talking about. And last but not least, we will get to the Butterbean's tank. Now, this is another one of those tanks. See, these are the lights I was talking about, that line of glare. I'm going to try to get rid of that by putting the aluminum foil on there. That's really just, that always annoys me, seeing it looks like a line of alien spacecraft getting ready to come over and take over the tank. So anyway, Butterbean has overgrown teeth. If you don't give puffers hard enough food to chew on, their teeth don't wear down. Think about like rodents, like beavers. If beavers don't chew on wood, then their teeth grow and grow and grow, and eventually they'll grow so long they can't open their mouth far enough to get food in it anymore, and then they starve. And the same thing will happen to a puffer. And I think what happened in my case was that I let the mineralization in my snail tank go away, and I was basically keeping the snails in fairly soft water, and without the additional calcium and everything, their shells just weren't very hard, and I don't think I was feeding him food that was physically hard enough to wear his teeth down. So if you look straight on at him, it's a little hard to tell in videos like this, but if you look straight on at him, you can tell his mouth's not fully closed. When you look at him, you're seeing his teeth. There's too much teeth there, and he's having trouble eating, so I'm having to chop his food up really small. I have got him to eat some small shrimp and snails, as long as I break up the shells on the bigger ones, but I've actually gotten him to eat some smaller ones without me having to assist him. And so hopefully I'm going to be able to simply keep feeding him snails. I have remineralized the tank. The snail shells are starting to get harder already. When I break them and crush them, I can tell they're nice, good, solid snail shells now. And so we're back on the right track. I'm just hoping that I can feed him enough that we can start wearing it down by giving him lots of snails. If not, I'm going to have to do a little minor surgery on him, and I'm not concerned about the actual surgical part. I'm concerned about the putting him to sleep in order to do the surgery part, because that's the part I'm nervous about putting him to sleep. You have to use clove oil, and clove oil is basically the same thing that you use to put them to sleep in the more permanent sense, the way we have to with our cats and dogs at the end of their life, in a lot of cases. So I don't want to put him to sleep, if you get my meaning. So I've got to get that balance just right, where I put him to sleep, but not permanently. He's supposed to wake up again when the procedure's over, and that's the part I'm worried about. Putting my fish in a bucket of clove oil water to knock him out so that I can do some surgery is just a little scary to me. Doing the surgery part, I'm not worried about that at all. That's going to be the equivalent of snipping a toenail, you know? But the putting him to sleep part is the part that I'm worried about. I think you've got the point by now. Anyway, that's it. All the way around the world in 23 minutes. We had a good trip today. Not too long. Nice and to the point. And once again, I will remind you that I do a live stream every Friday night and Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We hang out, we do some fish maintenance, we chat, I answer questions, we smoke a lot of weed. It's a good time if you want to just come hang out with me in the fish room. Again, Friday night or Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So thanks again, everybody, and I will see you real soon on the next one.